When the opening line of "Don't It Make My Brown Eyes Blue" played, the world seemed to pause. Everything around grew softer, quieter, and that voice, gentle, silky, like velvet, melted millions of hearts. Crystal Gayle never had to shout to be heard. She didn't break boundaries through rebellion, but rather, with a whisper, she sparked a quiet revolution in country music. In an era when country music was still associated with grit, toughness, and dust-covered boots, Crystal Gayle emerged, graceful, delicate, feminine, like a strange breeze sweeping through the desert. No one believed that such a tender voice could shake Nashville to its core. But she did. And she did it in a way no one saw coming. As the younger sister of the legendary Loretta Lynn, Crystal Gayle was once seen as a shadow, as someone following behind. But instead of chasing someone else's path, she dared to choose her own. A path that wasn't loud or brash, but powerful enough to open an entirely new chapter for country music. Behind the softness, behind the legendary long hair and poised beauty, was a childhood shaped by coal country poverty, a quiet fight to rise above prejudice, and an unshakable faith in music, the force that saved her, guided her, and later inspired a whole new generation of female artists. Have you ever heard that voice on a lonely afternoon? Have you ever wondered how someone so gentle could stand firm in the ruthless world of music for over half a century, without scandals or spectacle? This is the story of Crystal Gayle, the woman who made the whole world fall silent, just to hear a whisper. Early life. On January 9th, 1951, in a small town called Paintsville, Kentucky, nestled deep within the coal-rich Appalachian region, Brenda Gayle Webb was born. She was the youngest of 8 children in a working-class family, where the rumble of underground drills was more familiar than the sound of church bells. Her father, Ted Webb, was a coal miner, a quiet, hard-working man who spent his life digging deep into the earth to provide for his wife and children. But the cost of that life was inevitable erosion. By the late 1950s, he developed a severe case of black lung disease, a condition often called the silent death sentence of coal miners. In 1959, when Crystal was only 8 years old, her father passed away. For a child, it was the first time pain went beyond understanding. After his death, the Webb family moved to Wabash, Indiana, a colder industrial town but less brutal than the mountains. There, her mother, Clara Webb, worked various jobs while raising the children with an iron will and a heart full of music. Despite their poverty, their modest home was always filled with melodies, from Patsy Cline and Ray Price on the radio to Sunday morning church hymns. Like any child, Brenda once dreamed of simple things: a new dress, a winter with enough firewood. But she carried something different inside her. A voice. Not one that stunned instantly, but a tender whisper that slipped quietly into the soul, like wind drifting through an empty field. As she entered her teenage years, she watched her older sister, Loretta Lynn, begin to rise in Nashville. In 1960, when Loretta released her debut single, "I'm a Honky-Tonk Girl," Brenda was just 9. To her, Loretta wasn't just a sister. She was living proof that even the poor could dream, and dream big. While attending Wabash High School, Brenda began performing at local events, singing in churches and small clubs. But she remained the quiet girl living in her sister's shadow. In 1969, after graduating high school, she made the decision to pursue music seriously. With Loretta's help, she signed her first contract with Decca Records, the same label that had released Loretta's music. But that marked the beginning of an important choice. Brenda didn't want to be another Loretta Lynn. Her voice was softer, more infused with pop influences, no longer carrying the raw edge of classic country. It was Loretta herself who advised her sister to choose her own path, and Brenda listened, not just in music, but in spirit. In 1970, she adopted the stage name Crystal Gayle, officially stepping out from her sister's shadow. Why Crystal? Loretta said it was because Brenda's voice is as clear and smooth as crystal. And so, Crystal Gayle was born. From that moment on, Crystal was no longer a shadow. She became a light of her own, quiet, graceful, but strong enough to guide the hearts of millions seeking comfort. Early career. When Crystal Gayle signed her first recording contract with Decca Records in 1970, she was just 19 years old, a young woman with hair cascading past her shoulders and a voice as soft as silk. Yet even as she signed her name, most people still saw her through someone else's lens, the younger sister of Loretta Lynn, and that, more than financial challenges or the brutal competitiveness of the music industry, was the first wall Crystal had to climb. In the public eye, she wasn't an artist beginning her own journey. She was a blurred reflection of an already established legend. Her debut single, I've Cried, The Blue Right Out of My Eyes, released shortly thereafter, became a symbol of that confusion. A good song, but misheard from the start. People didn't listen to Crystal. They heard Loretta, only softer, lighter. She understood this. She felt the critics' skepticism and even the subtle pity from traditional country fans. But instead of trying to prove herself by shouting louder or copying harder, she chose to retreat in silence. She quietly walked away from her Decca contract, without blame, without bitterness, and waited for a chance to begin again. Not from someone else's shadow, but from her true self. That chance came 4 years later, in 1974, when she signed with United Artists Records and met producer Alan Reynolds, the first person to see Crystal not as an inheritance, but as a true Crystal, clear, distinct, and waiting to shine in the right light. Together, they crafted a sound that defied Nashville's conventions. A delicate blend of country and pop, gentle but not shallow, emotional but never saccharine. It wasn't music to cry out pain, but to soothe it. And so, Crystal began her first steps, quiet but steady. Wrong Road Again, released in 1975, climbed into the top 10, signaling that audiences were beginning to hear her, this time with their own ears. In 1976, her self-titled album Crystal carried her name even further, not through scandals, not through family fame, but through a voice that, when it sang, felt like someone whispering something deeply real, deeply personal, into the heart of loneliness. Then came 1977, and with it, what once seemed possible only in dreams. Don't It Make My Brown Eyes Blue? In an era when only upbeat tunes and powerhouse vocals were expected to chart, Crystal, with a hauntingly beautiful whisper, made America pause and listen. The song soared to number 1 on the country charts and number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, earning her a Grammy Award and transforming her from Loretta's little sister into the brightest star in her own constellation. She wasn't a pioneer of a new genre. She never claimed to be a revolutionary. But with her unwavering gentleness, Crystal Gayle paved a different kind of road. A road soft enough for weary souls to walk, and real enough that anyone who had ever loved or ached could see themselves in it. And it all began not with a scream, but with a quiet line. Don't it make my brown eyes blue? Career success. Following the resounding success of Don't It Make My Brown Eyes Blue in 1977, Crystal Gayle not only stepped out of Loretta Lynn's shadow, she shattered every mold that had ever confined women in country music. With floor-length hair, graceful yet proud, and a voice as smooth as velvet, Crystal didn't win over audiences with shock value, but with a kind of music so gentle it could reach the deepest sorrow, so refined it would outlast fleeting trends. In 1978, her album We Must Believe in Magic, which introduced Brown Eyes Blue, officially became the first platinum-certified album by a female country artist in the United States. It wasn't just a commercial milestone, it was a quiet declaration that a voice need not shout to be heard. That same year, Crystal won the Grammy Award for Best Female Country Vocal Performance, a moment both dazzling and understated, much like the woman herself. The 1980s marked a new chapter in which Crystal Gayle became more than a country artist. She became a true symbol of the countrypolitan movement. With hits like Talking in Your Sleep, 1978, Half the Way, 1979, and You and I, 1982, a duet with Eddie Rabbitt, Crystal brought country music into every corner of American radio, reaching listeners unfamiliar with steel guitars or bluegrass twang. She didn't just chart on country playlists, she broke into the pop mainstream, a rare feat previously accomplished by only a handful of artists like Dolly Parton. What's remarkable is that even as country music experienced a surge of bold, fiery young male artists, Crystal, with all her gentleness and restraint, held her ground. She never needed to compromise her identity to chase trends. Instead, she shifted the trends to embrace her identity. In 1983, with the release of True Love, a richly arranged collection of ballads, Crystal proved she wasn't just a hitmaker but a complete artist, one who knew how to move forward without ever losing the soul of her music. What set Crystal apart was this: success never cost her self-restraint. No scandals, no sensational headlines, no rebellious songs crafted to feed the media machine. In a world where fame is often bought with drama, she chose the harder path, building a career on artistic integrity, staying true to her essence, and holding the hearts of her listeners through the kindness woven into every note. By the mid-1980s, Crystal Gayle had amassed over 20 top 10 hits, a string of Grammy and Country Music Association nominations, and millions of records sold worldwide. But beyond the numbers, what she'd left behind was a musical space all her own, a place where those who had known loss, loneliness, or quiet nights of aching could find a voice to whisper what they could never say aloud. And so, as the world grew louder, and as younger artists leaned harder into image and individuality, Crystal Gayle, with her waterfall of hair and eyes filled with the sorrow of timeless ballads, remained ever present, like a silent note in the distance, soft, but never fading. Controversies and tragedy. Crystal Gayle's musical journey might appear to be a smooth, privileged path paved by family fame, but the truth was quite the opposite. Her first major obstacle, and perhaps the most profound challenge of her early career, came from her very blood tie to her legendary sister, Loretta Lynn. When Crystal signed her first recording contract with Decca Records in 1970, she was immediately boxed into Loretta's shadow. Despite having a voice entirely her own, softer, more modern, and leaning toward pop, she was pressured to sing in her sister's style, from vocal delivery to lyrical content. At the time, the name Crystal Gayle wasn't recognized as an independent artist, but rather as a lighter version of Loretta Lynn. This pressure led her to end her contract and walk away from Decca, risking her career to pursue a chance at defining her own artistic identity. Even after her breakthrough in the country pop scene, Crystal continued to face persistent controversy throughout her career. Was she still considered a true country artist? At a time when country music favored gritty, raw, and deeply Southern sounds, her music, elegant, tender, and pop-tinged, was often seen as over-softening the genre. Despite her Grammy wins and multiple chart-topping hits, traditionalists within the industry frequently labeled her as too commercial or detached from the roots. Prestigious institutions like the Country Music Association often overlooked her in favor of other artists of the era, even when her achievements far surpassed theirs. Crystal's silence in the face of these judgments was not due to a lack of opinion, but rather an understanding. Sometimes difference must be validated by time, not by argument. But the greatest tragedy of her life didn't come from the industry. It came from personal loss. On October 4th, 2022, Loretta Lynn, her sister, her inspiration, her anchor, and at times her greatest rival, passed away at the age of 90. For Crystal, it wasn't just the death of a loved one, it was the loss of a chapter of history, of a sacred and complex bond that had defined her life for over 70 years. In a brief message shared on social media, Crystal wrote, "She wasn't just my sister. She was the first star I ever looked up to." A simple sentence that carried within it their shared childhood, years of comparison, the long path out of her sister's shadow, and finally, the unspeakable grief of losing the only person who had truly understood that journey. No scandals, no public meltdowns. Yet Crystal Gayle endured deep, quiet upheavals, being dismissed as someone's sister, judged for choosing an artistic path that differed from the mainstream, and ultimately left alone when the one person who walked that road with her was no longer there. Behind a career that seemed serene lay a life marked by more heartache than most would ever guess. The difference being, Crystal chose to heal through music, not through complaint. Personal life. In a music industry where everything changes rapidly, from trends and tastes to the artists themselves, Crystal Gayle stands as something of a contradiction: calm, faithful, and never in a rush. If, on stage, she is the voice that gently whispers country's most tender ballads, then behind the scenes, Crystal embodies the image of a woman devoted to family, to love, and to timeless values no spotlight could ever replace. She met Bill Gatzimos when they were both teenagers in Wabash, Indiana, a modest industrial town where no one could have guessed it would raise a future international country music star. Bill was Crystal's classmate, not from the music world, but someone with an uncommon instinct for how to support the person he loved. They married on June 3, 1971, when Crystal was just 20, and her career was only beginning. No one could have predicted that this quiet union would last more than half a century, in an industry where breakups often come faster than the next chorus. Bill Gatzimos was not only her husband, but her silent partner in everything she did. After earning his law degree, he became a lawyer and later took on the role of managing Crystal's career. He ran Gayle Enterprises, helping her oversee touring schedules, recording contracts, copyrights, and business ventures. In an industry often dominated by major labels and commercial managers, Crystal maintained her independence thanks to Bill, not as a boss, but as someone who understood her down to the smallest detail. In the rare interviews where Crystal discusses her private life, she often emphasizes that respecting personal space is the foundation of their long marriage. "I have my music, and he has his world. But when we're home, we're just two ordinary people taking care of a home together." That balance helped them weather the pressures of fame, conflicting work schedules, and even the demanding years of Crystal's non-stop touring through the 1970s and 80s. The couple has two children, Catherine Claire, born in 1983, and Christos James Gatzimos, born in 1986. Both grew up away from the public eye. Christos, however, naturally followed in his mother's footsteps, becoming a music producer and collaborating with Crystal on her 2019 album, You Don't Know Me, a deeply traditional project for which he handled all the arrangements. Their artistic bond isn't flashy or commercial, but rich in mutual respect and emotional closeness. At many of her smaller shows, fans would see both Bill and Christos handling sound checks, greeting guests, and preparing backstage. more like a tight-knit family than a professional production crew. Unlike many of her contemporaries who have spent nearly every moment in the spotlight, Crystal Gayle chose a simpler life in Hendersonville, Tennessee, far from the noise of the city. She tends to her garden, goes to church, practices vocal exercises every morning, and occasionally performs in small theaters, places where she can meet the fans who've been listening to her since Brown Eyes Blue. Now in her 70s, she remains healthy, poised, and serene, a living testament to a life untouched by scandal or recklessness. Within the music community, Crystal is often described as an artist who lives the way she sings. Dolly Parton once said, "Crystal has a voice like spring water, pure, light, and peaceful." And her life is just like that. Those words weren't empty compliments. They were the truth. In over 50 years of performing, Crystal has never been part of a scandal, never suffered a public breakdown, never sacrificed her privacy for fame. In an era where artists often burn bright until they burn out, she chose to burn steadily and preserve her soul. When asked what she's most proud of in life, Crystal doesn't mention her Grammy Award or her millions of albums sold. She simply says, "I'm still singing, I still get to come home, and there's still someone waiting for me in the kitchen." That answer, simple, quiet, is the essence of a successful life that never needed noise to prove itself. Legacy and influence. There are voices that impress you, and then there are voices that make you stop. Crystal Gayle belongs to the latter, not because of overwhelming power, but because of a gentleness that seeps deep, like water flowing through stone. That was the beginning of a legacy not loud, but never forgotten. When "Don't It Make My Brown Eyes Blue" echoed across the airwaves in 1977, it wasn't just a hit, it was a shift. For the first time, a country female voice infused with pop and jazz undertones touched the hearts of listeners far beyond the country genre. The boundaries between the conservative South and the global mainstream blurred. With a single melancholy yet graceful ballad, Crystal ushered in a new era. The countrypolitan age, modern, elegant, and globalized. Her softness, the luxurious string arrangements, her cascading hair, and the simple silk gowns she wore on stage all helped shape a new image of the Southern woman. No longer the gritty, dust-covered girl of tradition, nor the fierce rebel battling injustice, Crystal stood in a softer light, and by doing so, redefined strength. In an industry where women often had to be as strong as men to earn recognition, Crystal didn't challenge anyone. She simply sang. Sang with a voice like a lullaby, soft as a sigh, yet one that made the world go quiet. What made her exceptional was that she never had to change herself to fit in. Rather, her steadfastness gently pushed the music world to shift toward her. Her journey extended far beyond the stage. Throughout a career spanning more than 5 decades, Crystal Gayle quietly did the kind of work that rarely makes headlines. From charity performances at children's hospitals to long-standing support for organizations like St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, MusiCares, the American Red Cross, and more. Even during the COVID-19 pandemic, when many artists pulled back, Crystal, well into her 70s, continued to appear regularly in live-streamed performances from the Grand Ole Opry, raising funds for struggling musicians. No hashtags, no campaigns, just music and a deep belief in kindness. She is also one of the rare few in show business to maintain a marriage lasting over 50 years. With her husband Bill Gatsimos, who also serves as her loyal manager, Crystal built a solid home. Not as a housewife who sings, but as a rooted, grounded artist. In an industry that often glorifies chaos and rebellion, her peace and loyalty have become, paradoxically, the most striking thing about her. When Loretta Lynn, her own sister and a country legend in her own right, personally invited her to join the Grand Ole Opry in 2017, it wasn't just a gesture of celebration. It was a long overdue but well-deserved recognition of a woman who had remained true to music and never once betrayed herself. Loretta once said, "Crystal never tried to be anyone else, and because of that, she never lost who she was." Crystal Gayle's legacy doesn't lie in statistics or chart records. It lives in the way her music made people feel safe, a comfort, a whisper, a note as gentle as a wool blanket laid softly across a weary day. She didn't spark a movement, didn't make a documentary about herself, didn't launch a cosmetics line bearing her name. But she left behind a model that you can live kindly, sing softly, remain whole, and still do something great. In a world growing louder and more chaotic by the day, Crystal Gayle still stands, like a warm, steady note that never falls out of tune. Later life. At 74, Crystal Gayle continues to shine, both on stage and in the hearts of her fans. In 2025, she is embarking on a nationwide tour across the United States with over 20 shows scheduled in cities, including Jefferson City, Kansas City, Colorado Springs, and more. Her sweet voice and graceful performance style still draw large crowds, from longtime admirers to a new generation of listeners. Beyond her music career, Crystal maintains a warm and grounded family life with her longtime husband, Bill Gatsimos, and their 2 children. Her son, Christos Gatsimos, is now a music producer and collaborated with her on the 2019 album, You Don't Know Me, Classic Country. Family remains a steadfast anchor, helping her strike a balance between public life and personal peace. Outside of music, Crystal Gayle actively supports charitable and community efforts. She frequently performs at fundraising events and backs organizations like St. Jude Children's Research Hospital and the American Red Cross, reflecting her deep compassion and sense of responsibility. Her ongoing dedication was formally recognized in 2017 when she was inducted into the Grand Ole Opry, one of country music's highest honors. With a career spanning over half a century, Crystal Gayle is more than a musical icon. She's a symbol of grace, resilience, and enduring love. She continues to inspire generations of artists and fans alike, proving that passion and talent have no age limit. At 74, Crystal Gayle may no longer stand in the blinding light of her peak fame, but she has never stepped out of the light. Not the dazzling light of spectacle, but the gentle glow of faith, love, and quiet endurance. The light that shines from within. As 2025 unfolds, you can still find her on posters for her nationwide tour, stretching from Jefferson City to Colorado Springs. No special effects, no pyrotechnics, just Crystal stepping onto the stage with her signature waterfall of hair, and the entire room falls silent. Every time she sings, it feels as if she's not just performing for the present, but reviving an era when music didn't need to be loud to reach the deepest parts of the soul. Though she hasn't released a new album since You Don't Know Me Classic Country in 2019, Crystal continues to record, collaborate with younger artists, and occasionally lend her voice to nostalgic projects. What's special is that her son, Christos, is not just her producer, but her artistic partner. In recent recording sessions, there's a beautiful harmony between generations, a gentle mother and her tech-savvy son creating a space that's both warm and creatively vibrant. Compared to other stars of her era, like Tammy Wynette or Dolly Parton, Crystal Gayle's private life is a rare oasis of calm. Since their marriage in 1971, she and Bill Gatsimos have remained united. Once a law student, Bill eventually became her career manager, quietly handling every contract, tour, and musical decision. In an industry of turbulence, they've been a rare couple who never needed drama to stay relevant. To Crystal, family isn't a retreat from the spotlight. It's a source of inspiration. Her daughter, Catherine Claire, prefers a quiet life, while Christos carries the artistic torch. They live together in Tennessee, in a modest home not far from downtown Nashville. Each morning, Crystal likes to walk through her garden with a cup of coffee, softly humming unfinished lyrics. Many of those songs are never recorded, but that's how she lives. Music doesn't need to be loud to exist, it just needs to keep playing. Time has slowed her steps, but never stopped them. Crystal Gayle remains active in charitable causes and community efforts, continuing to sing for benefit concerts and non-profit initiatives. Her tireless dedication was honored by the Grand Ole Opry in 2017, affirming a life lived with purpose and authenticity. At nearly 75, no one expects Crystal Gayle to prove anything more. Yet she still sings, still tours, and still speaks at music seminars to encourage young artists. When asked why she hasn't retired, she simply smiles and says, "I don't think of music as a job. I think of it as breath. And if it's breath, how can you stop?" In Crystal Gayle's world, the stage isn't a crown. It's a warm porch where she takes shelter when the outside world grows too loud. There, she doesn't need to fight to be seen. She only needs to show up. And as she has for over 50 years, she always shows up in the most beautiful way, humbly, quietly, and profoundly. Crystal Gayle, a voice as gentle as a mountain stream, hair as iconic as legend itself, and a musical journey that has never broken stride. From a little girl born in the coal country of Kentucky to the grandest stages in America, she never needed scandal or spectacle to shine. All she carried with her was a sincere heart, a voice untouched by artifice, and a love for music as deep as a mother's embrace. She was never the revolutionary force in country music, but she became its soul keeper, preserving it with femininity, grace, and pure-hearted honesty. In a world of stars that burn brightly only to fade too soon, Crystal Gayle remains a warm, enduring light, reminding us that success doesn't have to come with tragedy and gentleness is never weakness. With over 50 years of singing behind her, Crystal's voice has comforted millions. And even now, at 74, she continues to stand on stage, contribute quietly to her community, and remain a steady foundation for her family. As if music isn't just a calling, but the very breath she lives by. If you grew up with "Don't It Make My Brown Eyes Blue," if that crystal clear voice ever made you pause amid life's chaos, we invite you to share your memory in the comments below. Because music, like memories, is something worth preserving. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to continue discovering the untold stories of the voices that defined an era. See you in the next video.